When Marta sent out the messages for and the content of this Buckminster College Pearl Divers seminar, I saw that there was a lot of talk about mushrooms. And I was wondering about mushrooms. What is this about mushrooms? And so I dived into this world of the mushrooms. And okay, I must state, it's indeed all about the mushroom, isn't it?
And you tell us now what the mushroom says about the topic.
Yeah, we're gonna find out together, I hope. Otherwise, it's a big mystery. And if you look at the mushrooms, there is a lot of diversity. The mushroom cultivation is an issue, the mushroom consumption also, and mainly also the mushroom liberation movement and the fairy rings. They are very interesting topics, I think. But first of all, let's imagine yourself to be a mushroom. Or I have to.
If I may just jump in, those of you who don't understand why the mushroom, it's in the description of the seminar. So, you know, like you can revisit and understand the.
Yeah, okay. I had also could chosen the life of a poet or whatever.
Yes, but it's
yeah. But the mushroom was the first and
most evocative. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought, just let yourself imagine yourself to be a mushroom. What kind of mushroom would you be? And what properties do you have? And what are you good at? Or what are you good for? Whatever. And imagine then what will be your future as a mushroom. So you have a starting and a future. Well, what's your finality? And to help you a bit, I summed up a bit of the diversity things about the mushrooms. This here. There's an enormous diversity of mushrooms, and yes, the beauty. Some are very nice colored. Some of the mushrooms live preferably in group, although most solitary are individuals. They have very different tastes, from sweet to bitter to sour. Some are said to be poisoned. Some are used for medicine, and others have healing powers. They say, after all, it's an infinite diversity and infinite potential of mushrooms. And when man discovered the possibilities of the mushrooms, they started to think about how can we make money of this, of course. And then they created some special selection criteria. They forgot about the diversity of the mushrooms, and they said, well, what interested us most is the taste, texture, the bite, and the growth piece of a mushroom. And then, for focusing on these criteria, they created special environments to cultivate this at the best quality. And so the mushroom went from the free-range growth over the mushroom cave over there to the industrial plants. Remember you being that mushroom? Which place would you prefer to grow? That's still the question. And then, if man cultivates something for money, then it is basically for the end to use and for consumption. And so these selected criteria, they were a priori there. Mushrooms couldn't choose. They have to fulfill these criteria. They ended up in 3 qualities. Superior quality, and these selected on the form, the bite, and the taste, and they end up in top cuisine in restaurants. They will be eaten anyhow, but with style. And the first choice mushroom will end up in the top shelf, on the shelves in the supermarkets or the specialized shops. And they are also selected on form, bite, and taste. And in all the rest, the second and the third choice, well, they're only selected on taste and bites, because form doesn't matter anyhow, because they end up as canned fruit. So the basic statute of the mushroom is quality has meet selected criteria. They are there in advance, taught by economics. And then luckily, how it is in our society, there are some people who are not so happy with all these cultivation criteria, and they said, okay, there is a lot of collateral damage going on, but we cannot longer maintain this. We have to change. There are alternatives, because this industrial size and this over selecting on certain criteria wipes out all the diversity and all the possibilities of the mushroom world. But okay, if we focus just on these selection criteria, we end up with health diseases, we end up with industrial damage, environmental damage. And so there was the mushroom liberation movement that came here, and it's over there to find out about alternatives. For the moment, I will state that all similarities with educational obstacles are purely coincidental, exemplary of systemic. And there are alternatives. People say that alternatives can be dangerous to eat. Yes, it is possible that they are dangerous to eat, but maybe they have so much more to offer other things than for eating. And so I invite you not to stay focused on the appearances and the poorly selected qualities of the mushrooms, but dive into the invisible part of the rather messy and smelly mycelium. And that's the real treasure, in my opinion. Let's imagine the possibilities of the fairy rings. And the power of the fairy rings might be in its non-visible part in combination with the beautiful pop-ups. So we have to investigate what is beneath the earth, what is it, what the mycelium wants or can, or what are these capabilities. They are over this one of the biggest possibilities, but hidden for us. And then there are the beautiful pop-ups that we like to admire. Red, green, white, whatever. But they sometimes in beautiful circles, just like magic. And these interconnections, I think this is the clue where we also have to go with education. And when we talk about education, we want to see what's happening with the playfulness in society, because education is just one part of society. So I think it's good to look at from, okay, if we look at fairy rings, it's playful thing. It started our imagination, it's magic or it's science, whatever. But if you look at it, it is very playful. It doesn't have to grow in a circle. It's just one way of growing. So I went over to society and said, from well, what is playfulness now being around? And then I saw in the arts, of course, the Dada movement, surrealism, futurism, contemporary art, but also Bruegel was very playful, and Bosch, Jeroen Bosch, and I forget so many of these famous artists of the past. And then in the newspaper, I read last week that the museum in Ostend, the Contemporary Art Museum, said from now on we will look at our collection as a playground. And that was very fascinating, I thought. A huge collection of contemporary art, not only for scientific or archival things, but as a playground. So we can look around, walk around with it, and choose things, combine new things, and not only how it has to be according to history and art science. So I'm very curious what they make of it. They have a new exhibition, so let's go there. And then after the science, the arts, and what's rather obvious that they are playful, then we see also businesses can be very playful. And we had role playings always, like for job interviews, for team buildings, and so on. And there were also the informative games. In the 80s and 90s, I was involved with this live informative games. It was very in at that moment, talking about content in society, learning economics, learning skills by games, not games online, because computers and internet was not part of that time, but these were games that we could do around the table or outside in the park. That is still value, but there are new things coming up, of course, the gamification digitalized. And that is what I think is very attractive also for education purposes, because the means and the ideas behind gamification are very useful and attractive. So we have the gamification, the rewards program, and the video games in business. Well, let's point out video games are just there for fun, for entertainment. You play it, you win, you lose, you play again, or you don't play again. It's that. Then you have the reward programs. This some things that supermarkets and other big venues want you to play, because then you are attached to their branch. So if you play and you do what they ask, you fill in some questions, you click on some buttons, and then you get rewarded. But that is not what we are talking about here, because that's rather same as a paper where you have to fill in some words of some numbers in school. But the gamification as such is about motivation. It can bring the motivation of the player and the organization together. And if we can bring the motivation of the player and the organization or the company of the school, whatever, together, we automatically can fulfill the aspirations of the organization if the player plays till the end. And I think that's very important thing to play with. For the rest, gamification, reward programs, and video games have the same appearances, can have the same appearances. They play with leaderboards, with points to win, with badges and so on. But that's only under the surface. There's something other going on, I think. In education, there's a lot of talking about playfulness also. Piaget pointed out already some things about play. This is a theory for development. We're not going to dive in there because it would take us far away from the topic of the seminar. But okay, it was always, I mean, not always, it was there for a while, and it's still an ongoing idea. This education and playfulness and play have connections. But I think that in education, you can, before you go to the gamification, where we come to later, there are other things to do. And it can be very simple somehow. You don't have to have a lot of money to make games. You don't have, well, if you don't have good internet connection, it's not to worry about. You just can be playful in your classroom or outside your classroom, and more or less it's about attitude, I think. If you challenge the students, for example, by saying, let's find the connection between horses, parking lots, lichens, and oak trees, then you have a challenge, and we can change. We can go on fantasizing, making research and things. And that's a totally different approach than saying, well, my best students, sit down today, we're gonna talk about air pollution and climate change. You see the difference? You're basically doing the same, but you take it to another level. In one part, students will do a lot of work. In the other part, you have to do everything, and nobody will listen anymore after 10 minutes. But you can also do other things, of course, like biodiversity loss. This I have to talk a lot of these things, and mostly they invite me in schools, but today I refuse to go to schools. We say, let's meet in a park or in a wood somewhere, and then we talk about the loss of biodiversity. because what sense does it make to talk about it in the classroom? So we go outside, and I took the students to a river, and we hopped on a boat, and several little boats. It was too much for one boat, several little boats, and we went to the river. And the fascinating thing was, well, there was fun the first 5 minutes, drawing out the water and playing in the water, but then they came to relax, and he mentioned that there was a lot of going on the riverside and on the land fording the river. And they saw trees cut down, a lot of trees, a lot of mess. And then they were asking, what's happening here? And then together we discovered, well, it's the beaver. The beaver is coming back to these parklands. And they say it's a problem that the beaver is back. Oh, why it's a problem? Well, okay, let's find out. And imagine that boat, you're the beavers, here are the humans, and let's find out some things. And let's see, how can we look at this from the side of the beaver or the side of the humans? For the one, it's necessarily survival things. For the other, it's a lot of mess and dangerous. How can we connect these? And is there a solution possible? And if you do that, students think about it all the time. They make works that they take, even after weeks, they send mails with, I thought about this and I found out that. So it is very, very simple, I think, to use plays, game, and playfulness in schooling. You have to do it, of course. And at last, if you're not so creative, you can always use simple board games, of course. Like here is a picture of these geniuses from the Big Bang Theory that play always Dungeons and Dragons. Well, you can play Dungeons and Dragons as board game or now online. And you can use it even for language education. It's just the way of looking at it. Okay, I have to hurry up. I see. So gamification creates a lot of chances and opportunities. It's a tool to connect the purposes of the students, the educator, and the game master. It's all about voluntary things, desire, curiosity, and drive. And main thing is intrinsic and emotional motivation. I'm going to sum up a bit, kind of conclusion. Education and gamification, one game, question mark. Games are F to the fourth. It's about freedom, about feedback, about friends, about fun. Freedom, you see here, the need of freedom to fail. You can't fail in a game. More or less, games, people who design games start to build their game from the idea that you will fail. You will fail, but you won't give up. So you start in little steps, and the little steps you can conquer and win. Then you go to the next level, the next step. So you build up your content. You get master of your own curriculum, for example. And that's the basic for I think, for gamification. And it can also be used in education. The freedom to fail. If you acknowledge the freedom to fail, you are also in the freedom to experiment. Because if you know that you cannot fail, or you will not be punished to fail, like in schooling systems, if you fail, you get to a lower step. If you fail in a game, you just stay on the same level and you can start over again until you move. It's always a progress. In schooling systems, it's a downward spiral. That's a thing we can change very easily, I think. And then to combine games and education into successful gamification needs to fulfill the purposes of the students and the school. And if the students, and if this is succeeded and the students will play the game, the success and the objects, the targets of the school will also be there, because they are the same, basically. They will win both. There's a problem with digitalization of gaming because it has a huge initial costs. If they're specialized, because if you do it wrong, you mess up the things. In real life, you can always be some more creative and get to the last minute some changes. But if a program is fixed, it has to be good, and it has possibilities for the long time. So that's a thing you have to consider when you started it. But as I said, you can do gamified things also in real life. It can be a very powerful tool for education, because also imagine that if for some skills training or for language trainings, students are into it, you have a teacher that has free hands, free minds to do other things, to help people who are not in that level. So it's another kind of interaction between students and teachers, I think, that will make it possible, because it's more individualized learning paths that automates to the mastery, but the teacher is important as a go-between the game, the content, and the student, but also he has hands-free to do other things. And then it's a very interesting thing for dealing with the abundance of information. There is a lot of information, and the contemporary schooling system is built on the lack of information. There was one teacher who knew it all, and now we have everything, but we now have to learn how to choose, make choices, how to see what is good, what is bad information. And games can help with this, and can help you dig deeper into certain issues. Okay, that was a quick run.
Fantastic.
And
Thank you.
12 mushrooms unite and take over, I would say.